We are going to look at how to multiply and divide fractions. And the first couple of examples are multiplication. When you multiply two fractions, you are going to multiply straight across, meaning you're going to multiply the numerators together, then the denominators together, and then you'll simplify that fraction if needed. We'll say 6 times 3 when we multiply the top numbers together, and that gives us 18. To multiply the denominators, 7 times 4, that gives us 28. The multiplication is just straight across. I have several videos where we kind of break down how to simplify fractions. So if you want to go back and reference that when we get, since we're at the simplifying fractions. But to simplify this fraction, 18 over 28, we look at what's a number that divides evenly into 18 and then also divides evenly into 28. And we talked about in the previous video, we know that they're both, since they're both even, we know it at least simplifies by 2, so it's not in simplest form yet. And again, if you're not sure about your multiplication, we can use our calculator to kind of guess and check to find a number that divides evenly into both. If we were looking maybe for a larger number other than 2. But 2 is going to be the largest number that divides evenly into both. So I'm going to divide the top number by 2 and also the bottom number by 2. You have to divide top and bottom by the same number. And that's going to give me 9 over 14. And if you just wanted to double check that there's no number that divides evenly into 9 and 14, think about the factors of 9, which would just be 3 and 9, right? And none of those will divide evenly into 14. So I know that this is in simplest form, but that's just something to kind of double check, especially if you're taking a test. And you just want to make sure that your fraction's in the right form. Okay, so multiplication goes straight across, and I am gonna work on all the operations with fractions. So that's important to make sure you know which one goes with each set. So multiplication is straight across when you multiply, and then simplify. For number 2, I'm going to multiply the top numbers, and I would say 5 times 4 is 20. And then 8 times 10 is 80. So I would get 20 over 80. Again, they're both even, so I know I can at least simplify by 2. If you know your divisibility rules, you know that since they both end in 0, that we could also divide them by 10. So I'm going to divide this by 10 to simplify. And there is a larger number, there are smaller numbers. Again, it doesn't matter which ones you choose. You just may have multiple steps depending on what number that you choose. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. 80 divided by 10 is 8. And I get the fraction 2 over 8. Now that's not in simplest form. They're both even, so I know I can at least divide it by 2. I need to keep going. So I'm going to come down here and say 2/8 divided by 2. Reducing it by 2. I'm dividing top and bottom by 2. And I get 1/4. And then that would be my simplest form. You could have simplified it by 20, and you would have just had one step. Again, there are several things that you could have reduced 2 over 80 by, but you should all get to 1/4. Now I am going to show you just another way to work this problem where we simplify first. And so sometimes students in my classes, they've seen this method before, and sometimes they've never seen it before, so they don't even like to work it this way at all. So again, the way that we just worked it is fine. That's the way I usually show in class because that seems to be the way that most students are familiar with. but there is a way where you can simplify first and then multiply. And that's helpful because then you have smaller numbers for your answer. And maybe you're not having such large numbers to try to simplify with. So let's look. All right, so I want to multiply these two fractions together, but I want to simplify first. Now, when I'm simplifying these fractions, I'm looking at the diagonals, the numbers that are across from each other. I'm looking at 5 and I'm looking at 10. And I kind of want to do the same thing when I'm reducing the fraction. I'm looking at, is there a common factor between 5 and 10? Is there a number that divides evenly into 5 and 10? And it's 5. And I'm going to reduce each one by 5. I'm going to say 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 10 divided by 5 gives me 2. So I just looked for a common factor and I divided each number by that common factor. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So my new value is 1 and 2. Now I'm going to look at these two. And sometimes, you know, maybe just one diagonal simplifies and maybe this one doesn't. They don't both have to simplify. Sometimes neither one of them will simplify first. But in this case, I can. I'm looking at 8 and 4, and they have a common factor of 2 and then also 4. So I'm going to go with a bigger number. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So I take my common factor 4 and I divide each one by 4. So these are my new fractions. Then I do the same thing. I multiply those straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. When I simplify like this, the answer is in simplest form. So I don't have to then take my answer and simplify it again, as long as I picked the largest factors here. I wouldn't have to simplify again. So you may or not have seen this method of simplifying first, but again, sometimes it's easier to simplify with smaller numbers, depending on what you're starting with, and then to simplify at the end. All right, again, you may not always have factors that simplify. But it can be an easy, quick way to multiply if you're familiar with this method. So that's multiplication, straight across, and then simplify, or simplify first and then multiply straight across. Let's look at division of fractions. Now, when you're dividing fractions, there's different names for the method. Sometimes we say multiply by the reciprocal. I've heard some catchy little phrases to help people remember. I like to say keep, flip, change, so KFC. And what I mean by that is that you're going to keep the first method the same. The first fraction the same. So 2/7. You're going to flip the second fraction. So that's where that reciprocal comes in. I'm just flipping that second fraction, 14/9. And then I'm going to change the division to multiplication. So instead of 2/7 divided by 9/14, I have 2/7 times 14/9. Okay, division is the only time when you're working with operations with fractions where you're going to flip it. There's only one operation where you flip the fraction, and that's divide. Multiply, you go straight across. Divide, you flip just the second fraction. And then now it turns into what we were just doing. We're going to multiply straight across and we're going to simplify. Now, if you like to simplify first, you need to flip your fraction before you start simplifying. Don't start simplifying here. Flip the fraction, and then if you have factors in common, you can simplify. So in this example, we could simplify the 7 and the 14, but we couldn't do anything with the 2 and the 9 because they don't have any factors in common. but we're going to go straight across and we're going to multiply. So I'm going to get 28 when I say 7 or 14 times 2, and then 7 times 9 is 63. So I have 28 over 63. I want to make sure my answer is in simplest form. So I'm looking, are there any numbers that divide evenly into 28 and to 63? And I can't use the fact that, you know, the 2, because 63 is not even. So it's not going to be divisible by 2. So I need to look at some other numbers. Think about your multiplication tables. Maybe use your calculator to guess and check and find some things that divide evenly into 28 and 63. I would start out with a smaller number, 28, and think about things that multiply to 28. We know 4 times 7 is 28, so you might try 4 or 7 and see if that works for 28. So let's say 28 divided by 7 gives us 4. So 7 works for 28. Let's see if 7 will also work for 63. It does. I can simplify both of these numbers by 7. I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 7. And I would get 4 over 9. And then those don't have any factors in common. There's no number that divides evenly into both of those. So I know my answer is 4 over 9. Let's look at number 4. 4/5 divided by 1/3. I'm dividing. So if you're in my class, when you get to our fraction test, that's one thing I always tell students to do is look at your problem, pay attention to what operation you're doing, and then think about what steps go with that operation. So again, if this was multiplication, we would go straight across. Since it's division, we're going to keep the first number the same. We keep it the same. Then we flip the second fraction. So 3 over 1. And then I change the division to multiplication. Then from there, I multiply straight across and simplify. In this case, we can't simplify first because none of the diagonals have factors in common. 4 times 3 is 12. And 5 times 1 is 5. So I get 12 over 5. This is what we'll talk about in a future video with it's called an improper fraction. It's where the top number is larger than the bottom number. Those represent values that are greater than 1, where our proper fractions are less than 1. And we can write these in 2 ways. We can keep them as improper fractions, and we could also write them as a mixed number, which is a whole number and a fraction. And it just kind of depends on what class you're in and what, you know, the directions are on your assignment as to how you want these answers. But if I'm looking at it just to keep it in fraction form, I'm looking to see if I can simplify this. There are no factors in common between 12 and 5. The factors of 5 would just be 1 and 5. The factors of 12 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And so none of those are the same. So this would be considered in simplest form, 12 over 5. And so if you want to see how to change this to a mixed number, or you're interested in multiplying and dividing with mixed numbers, that's going to be in the next video.